All right, that is noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome back to this year's NNP Symposium. This is our third year doing a hybrid event with Central States. So we have people here in person in Schaumburg, as well as watching online live over Zoom. The symposium, all of the speakers and the organization, and the live streaming is sponsored by the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society, and our physical space here in Schaumburg is sponsored by Heritage. So grateful to both of them for making this happen. For those of you online, you will be able to participate in the Q&A at the end using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll cover that when we get there. If you've come to more talks than this, you have heard me talk about that way too many times already. So this presentation is going to be from Bob Bair. Bob, I'm going to have you go ahead and turn on your camera and mic. It'll be up at the top of your screen. If you hover over the green bar, it'll pop down, and they're both on the left. So Bob Bair is a lifelong educator. He was a teacher, a coach, and as well as a school principal before he retired. And he began collecting coins in 1956. So we have a lot of experience to go on. And today we will be hearing about love tokens with a numismatic memento of a lifelong love. So let's go ahead and make sure that your mic is working, and then I will turn it over to you.
Sounds good to me, Leanna. Can you hear me okay?
That's perfect. All right, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Leanna. And gee, thanks to the NNP and Heritage and everybody else who's involved in this wonderful numismatic operation where we coin nuts can plug into all kinds of symposia. And, many of you have already from this year and from past years. So I'm just honored and appreciative of the opportunity to be here. You can see from the title of my slide that there's a connection between love and numismatics. And I want this program, I'm a former history teacher. I spent a lot, 25 years or thereabouts, in rooms full of 13-year-olds. And I've discovered very quickly there are two things that had to happen. I had to be enthusiastic about what I was doing, and there's no problem with anything that's coin related. But I also I figured out very quickly, I had to, rather than just throw dates and places and events at them, the more I could make people from the past come to life for them. That there were people just like them who were motivated by the same things and had the same kind of interests. When that sort of realization came to 13-year-olds, things got a lot more interesting. So over the course of this presentation, we'll take a look at some people who are in many instances involved with numismatics in a way, using coins as love tokens or appreciations of their love. But there's a universal theme right there. All of us have experienced romantic love and value romantic love, and it's one of the most important things that motivates us and the world. It makes the world go around, as the old song used to have it. So we're going to take a brief look at love tokens and then at some people from the past who, some of whom had love tokens, and yes, one couple that definitely did. So let me go to the next slide and we'll see how we start here. If I can make it work. Oh, no. Uh, I seem to be frozen on the very first slide, and I can't make it move.
Okay, do you want to take your mouse and click on that slide?
I don't have a mouse per se. I have a cursor,
Okay,
and I'm
just a different
okay.
name.
Okay, it
There we
just
go.
went good, good. I'm really trying to use a clicker as well. Well, guys, what we see here are some people and some numismatic tokens from the past that have represented romantic love. There's a Civil War couple uh, on your left who may or may not have had a love token. Over on your right, you see an example of a love token. It was typically it was done in Great Britain a lot and also in the US during the Victorian era, kind of the 1830s onward in Great Britain, and really the same period in the United States where tokens like this became a representation of romantic love that couples shared. Good, it worked. Here's just another example of a love token that was, they were often put either in bracelets or necklaces. And you can see that this one, um, this kind of center screen is in a bezel. Looks like it might be a CB initial or whatever. But as you see over on the left, there these two countries, the US and Great Britain, uh, featured these a lot. Engagement rings didn't really come into play much until the 20th century. Some marketing genius at De Beers, the South African Diamond Consortium, came up with the slogan "Diamonds are forever," and it caught on, and engagement rings with diamonds in them became the thing. But prior to that, in the 19th century, love tokens were very, very often used. As you see from the second bullet point, coin of the realm, they would be hand engraved on one side after the side had been smoothed off, where the information from the mint or the figure of liberty or whatever was smoothed away. There would be two initials usually, or three or four. It could be done any way a person wanted it to. Usually the initials represented the giver. Sometimes the initials would be both the giver and the recipient. But that was really up to the couple as to, and in particular, the guy. It was typically the guy who would give a love token to the lady. Most commonly done at that time on dimes and quarters in the US in the mid 19th century. That was a lot of money at that time. I've seen them, and they exist in gold. I've seen $2.50 golds. I've even seen 120. Well, not many of those, because that would have been a ton of money at that time. But the idea was that the coin represented value, and putting the initials of the giver and or the recipient on them showed a bond and a connection with value, yes, but also really it's really about love, romantic love. Now, I don't know if these two had a token, a love token or not, but there's such a story that you may be familiar with about Sullivan and Sarah Ballou that's come from the Civil War. I've got a little clip put together that is just so neat. They had an incredible love. You can see from the column at the right that he was killed at the First Battle of Bull Run. But before that, he was a major in the Second Rhode Island Volunteers. About a week before the battle was going to happen, the armies were massing, and they could tell that there was going to be conflict imminent. But he was sitting in his tent one night and almost certainly had a premonition of his death. And he sat down and wrote an incredibly beautiful love letter to his wife, Sarah, back in Rhode Island. Now, the picture you see of Sarah, she's obviously older. He died in 1861. She died in 1913. And the original copy of Sullivan Ballou's, she never married again. She'd given her heart to Sullivan and he to her. And after his death, they had two little boys, Willie and Eddie, 7 and 5. Sarah and extended family raised them to honorable manhood, as Sullivan will refer to in his letter. And the original copy of the letter almost certainly was put in Sarah's casket in 1913 when she died and went off to rejoin her Sullivan. But it had been copied by both Willie and Eddie and their families, and it survived. And the story of that letter appeared in Ken Burns and Lynn Novak's incredible documentary on the Civil War. The next slide will have a little bit on that. I want to acknowledge them. 14 million or so Americans for 5 nights were exposed to an incredible documentary on the Civil War. It wasn't as complete as it might have been, but it was a great, great documentary put together. And part of it was a reading of Sullivan Ballou's letter to his beloved Sarah, and the song "Ashokan Farewell," which when the music plays, I think it'll be familiar to you. But this letter and that song in Ken Burns and Lynn Novick's documentary just absolutely touched on romantic love, yes, and real people just like you and me who had love, who were in love, who all they really wanted was to be with their loved ones and their families. But something like the Civil War in this instance obviously got in the way, shall we say. Many pictures are shown of couples here as this song plays and as the letter is read. And at the very bottom, you note Ken Burns and Lynn Novick went out of their way to pick pictures of the couples where there's touch, typically the woman with her hand on her beloved's shoulder, or they're holding hands. The human contact that you get from touch, that you show when you touch someone else like that, for a photograph, when the husband or the lover has decided, I've got to do this, I've got to go off and be in the war, and his beloved is saying, I so want you to come back. Please be careful, do your best. I know what you have to do, but I want and need you to come back to me. You'll see that sort of romantic attachment in picture after picture as we do the song.
Okay, before we get started with the video, Bob,
Yeah?
we set up your screen share to share the sound, so we're not going to be able to hear it. So I'm going to ask you to go back one slide. Oh,
major Rhode Island
never mind.
volunteer.
I think it's going to work.
It is.
July the 14th, 1861, Washington, D.C. Dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. And lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I am no more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how American civilization now leans upon the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break. And yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly with all those chains to the battlefield. The memory of all the blissful moments I've enjoyed with you come crowding over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and you that I've enjoyed them for so long. And how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes in future years, when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and see our boys grown up to honorable manhood around us. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I loved you, nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I have sometimes been. But oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they love, I shall always be with you in the brightest day and the darkest night. Always. Always. And when the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath, or the cool air, your throbbing temple. It shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for me, for we shall meet again. Sullivan Ballou was killed a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run.
Well, I'm not sure what happened to the Ashokan farewell music that accompanied it, but it almost doesn't matter. The letter was wonderfully read, and it was incredibly beautiful and absolute. There's a reason it's lasted for 160 years and has been a representation of true love. Well, all right. Here's now we shift over toward numismatics once again. Um, Once in a while, as a researcher, and I'm an old retired guy now, former school principal and eighth grade teacher, as I mentioned, and all that. But I don't watch TV. Commercials and canned laughter killed it for me decades ago. But I read and I research and see if I can find interesting topics related to numismatics. And I stumbled upon all kinds of information about a young 19th century couple where their love blossomed in Baltimore, Maryland. The guy, he was a young medical student at Johns Hopkins. He met this beautiful, intelligent Baltimore debutante in 1897 at a church social. Well, you know, one thing led to another. They fell in love. They offered their hearts to each other. You know, in 1898, they each knew that their love was forever. And Frank was his name. Frank said to Emma, she was Emma Alta. There'll be more on that later. Emma, I love you, and I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me? Oh, Frank, I will be your wife with all my heart. Yes. That commitment made in 1898 blossomed. Here's a picture of Frank's family that I was able to come up with. Frank is in the second row to your right. And if you look very carefully, just above the shoulder of, I think it must be an older sister of his, you can see his pocket watch, which men commonly in the 19th century and into the 20th century had, you know, there'd be a watch pocket on their vest and they'd wear that. The whole family was a farm family in Ohio, kind of south central, southwestern Ohio a little bit. And here they are, and the whole family in their Sunday best, dressed up for the family photograph. The patriarch of the family had done pretty well. They had some money, as you can see, which it would have taken to be able to send Frank, who decided he wanted to be a doctor and help other people, to send Frank off to Johns Hopkins Medical School. And, you know, where at a church social, he met Emma Alta. I was able to find out a lot more about Emma Alta, really. This is about the only thing on Frank that I was able to come up with before their marriage, at least. But Emma has quite a record, and we're going to take a look at what she accomplished. This is her diploma from, all right, the Maryland State Normal School, it was called. That was, in effect, high school. And you can see E. Alta Milburn received this diploma in 16 or so subjects, kind of in the middle of the text. You can probably see some of it. I have a clearer copy on the next slide, but orthography, reading, writing, arithmetic, 16 subjects. She ended up with a 91 average, which is cum laude in Latin with honors. And you can see on the diploma, it was written 3 years. Normally, a high school course of study is 4 years. Emma Alta Milburn did it in 2 years. And not only is this a diploma from the normal school, but in that time, if you received the diploma, and in particular with honors, she was certified to teach in the Maryland schools, in primary and grammar schools, and she's 16 years old. Let's look at the next slide, where you can see some of this a little bit clearer. Yeah, there it is. Emma Alta, E. Alta Milburn. It was written 3 years, and then she or someone crossed it out because no, it only took 2 to do a 4-year course and end up with a 91 average to end up cum laude with honors in all those 16 subjects and be certified as a teacher at age 16. She went out into the Baltimore public schools where there were all kinds of kids and all kinds of issues and all kinds of socioeconomic status at age 16. And that was what she wanted to do, was to get kids in kind of kindergarten, first grade, in the lower grades, to get them a start on their education so they could achieve the kind of things that she had. Now, this was the kind of life that Emma had or could have had. Her dad was a really prosperous stonemason. In fact, if you go to Baltimore now and look at the City Hall in Baltimore, all the figures carved, all the elaborate stonework on the building were done by her dad. He was just about finished with the whole project on the City Hall when he was up on a scaffold 3 floors high, and a rope broke, or he slipped off the scaffold or something, fell 3 floors and almost killed himself. He decided after that he would work on tombstones rather than go up again. But he had assistants who finished off the work that he had done, 90 or so percent of. But fine, it's the Gilded era in the United States where those who had money and made money in a pre-income tax era, income tax didn't come along until 1913, their life was a social whirl. With regular debutante balls and regular dinners and balls and social gatherings. And Emma could have had this her entire life if she'd wanted. But starting at age 16, she wanted to be out there in the trenches, so to speak, working with kids of all socioeconomic status, getting them a foundation in education, rather than living this sort of upper crust, rich sort of a social life that could have been hers. Here are the two of them, and this is interesting and typical of the 19th century. Frank and Emma had committed themselves to each other in 1898. I love you. Will you be my wife? Yes, I can't wait. I'll be your wife. But back in the 19th century, as you're probably aware, it was expected that the prospective groom would go to the father of the prospective bride and say, "Sir, I wish to marry your daughter. May I have your permission to marry your daughter?" Now, in this case, Frank, as a Johns Hopkins medical student, he was just an outstanding guy and obviously had a future. To be a doctor of medicine from Johns Hopkins in the late 19th century is a pretty big deal. And of course, the father said yes. And the father, well, when do you want to do the wedding? And this says something about Frank. He said, "I'm a student now at Johns Hopkins. I'm not worthy of Emma until I'm certified as a doctor. When I'm Dr. Frank, then I want to get married to your daughter after that." So sure enough, he graduated and got his doctor's degree, his certificate in June of 1898, 99, and the two got married in November. And come back with me now, if you will, to imagine yourself in the church where this wonderful young couple who are so committed to each other are going to be married, and the ceremony is starting. The minister's up front. The best man has the ring, the entrance of the bride with her father, and so on. All of that takes place. And here's kind of a recreation of that day in 1899 when they married. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here on this day to join this man, Dr. Francis M. Bair. And all right, some of you probably figured out where Bob Bair got all these archives and all this information on this couple. Dr. Francis M. Bair is my dad's dad, my grandfather, and this woman, Emma Alta Milburn Bair, is my grandmother. And that's where I got the research information that you've seen already. But they were joined in holy matrimony on this day in November of 1899, and this would have been the initial announcement made. But now we're talking about not just a wonderful romantic couple, but my grandpa and my grandma. This has always amazed me, and I've never figured out how they ended up. He could have been a very prosperous doctor in Baltimore. Of course, there are many, many, many doctors in Baltimore in the late 19th century or now or at any time. But for some reason, he and she decided that they were going to go out to the western frontier virtually, which at that time, part of that was southwestern Wisconsin, the lead and zinc mining district of southwestern Wisconsin, about 10 or 15 miles from Dubuque, Iowa, and about maybe 50 miles or so from Madison, Wisconsin. But really hard scrabble, really rough. You see from the picture on your left there, that's the business district in 1908. No paved roads. This is before Henry Ford's Model T and so on. So it's all horse and buggy and horses. And here is a picture of Dr. Frank Bair and his wife, probably around the turn of the century. I don't have a date for that at all. But for some reason, well, one of the reasons I know that they decided to go there is that there was a shortage of doctors in the lead zinc district, and there was a need for it. I mean, back in at the turn of the 20th century, if you had a medical emergency and Dubuque is 10 miles away or 15 miles away or whatever, how fast can your horse and buggy go to get you to a hospital or whatever where you can have your medical emergency dealt with? It was important to have a doctor. And Cuba City, Wisconsin, population 638 in 1900, had no doctor, and there weren't any closer really than Dubuque. And when Dr. Frank Bair and his wife decided they were going to go to Cuba City and he would be the doctor. And for a while, she taught for a while there, of course, because she could, but she also worked as his nurse. And he trained her. She was so smart. He trained her virtually by doing, and also, with his advice when they had a medical emergency come in. But they were quite happy in small town Wisconsin dealing with in the lead zinc district where mining was really active. Every now and then dynamite would go off prematurely and some guy would a bunch of guys would either be killed or seriously hurt, or there'd be difficult births out on, southwestern Wisconsin farms where Dr. Frank would have to go sometimes for a week at a time or so to deal with like a mining disaster or to deal with a difficult birth or whatever. And that's leading us toward what he took with him and what he had on his person ever since he and his beloved Emma Alta got married or committed their love to each other. All right, as the slide here mentions, and you saw a picture with the Bair family of young Frank before he went off to Johns Hopkins with a pocket watch that would be on a chain in his vest pocket. All right, from the moment in 1898 that his beloved Emma Alta Milburn, and I should mention that Alta was her mom's name, and it was given to her as her middle name. My dad is Robert Milburn Bair. He was senior. I'm Robert Milburn Bair Jr. And this always interested me. His mom in particular so valued her family and her mom that even though he was Robert Milburn, she called him Milburn all his life. And I asked him about that when I was a little. Dad, I thought your name was Robert. Well, yes, it is, but my mom is honoring her family by calling me Milburn because that's my middle name in honor of her family. Anyway, so Dr. Frank attached a bezel with a $5 Liberty gold coin dated 1898. That was when the two of them had pledged their love to each other. All right, and he wanted to do that so he would be reminded of, as the slide says, his Emma every time he pulled out his pocket watch to check the time of day. That was when they pledged themselves to each other, and just looking at that coin and its date would bring a smile to his face. Yep, this is when we swore our love to each other. All right, so not only did he have the coin in a bezel, But knowing that mining disasters, farm childbirths, or whatever would keep him away from Emma and Cuba City for long periods, he put a portrait of the only love of his life in the back of his pocket watch. And I didn't know I ended up inheriting the watch and the coin and so on. And I had no idea that a picture of my grandmother was in the watch until one day, just kind of unscrewing the back, to see if maybe I should oil this watch or whatever. I unscrewed it, and lo and behold, there was a picture of my grandmother that I'm sure when he was far away from her, and had to spend a week or whatever with a mining disaster, he would open the watch at night before he'd go to bed, and I just bet he would give her a kiss or talk to her and tell her how much he loved her. And she was always there with him, even when he had to be away, being a doctor, helping someone with a mining disaster or a childbirth. Here you see over on the left his pocket watch with its gold chain. You over on the right, there is the back of the watch with Frank's picture of his beloved Emma Alta. And in the middle is the coin. In 2022, as CACG grading was just getting started, John Albanese or someone with CACG grading thought it would be neat to have an essay contest where all kinds of people could send in essays about a coin that was important to them in some way, it had to be like no more than 150 words or whatever. And initially they said, fine, we'll take the ones that we decide are the best 10, and we'll, at no charge, encapsulate them in a CACG coin holder. Well, it turned out they got 122 essays from all kinds of people about coins that were important to them or part of their family history or whatever. So they expanded the number of coins that would be encapsulated for free, doubled it from 10 to 20. This coin and the essay that I wrote was number 4 in the estimate of the judges or whatever, whoever they were, that decided which of the 20 out of 122 essays about coins would be encapsulated. Frankly, I don't care. It gave me such pleasure and it was such an honor to gather all of this information, to write an essay, and yes, of course, to put together a presentation like this for all of you folks to appreciate and enjoy. And I didn't mention this, but that's Emma Alta's wedding ring just above her picture in the watch, and it's engraved on the inside with the November 28th, 1899 date when she and her Frank got married. This is the only 3-generation picture that survived, and you can tell it's barely survived. It got folded somewhere over the years. I never really knew Frank. I was too young when he died in 1948. My guess is, looking at the lawn and so on, probably he died of cancer. And it looks as if he's lost some weight and he doesn't look terribly healthy. That's my dad obviously holding me. But my guess is Frank died in September of 1948. And I bet this is probably June-ish or so of his last year when this picture was taken of the 3 generations. I was just 2 years old, so I have no memories at all of Dr. Frank. Now, my grandmother, Emma Alta, I was 7 years old then, and she was everything a grandma should be. When the little Bobby would come over, there'd be a plate of chocolate chip cookies, home baked or whatever, and all kinds of attention spent on her grandson. And I have very fond memories of her she died in 1954, went at last to join her Frank in 1954. I was 7, almost 8 when she died. So I was old enough to have had some memories of her. They're both buried in Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Cuba City. Their joint tombstone there together. He in 1948, she in 54. She wanted to put Alta Milburn uh, on her side of the family gravestone in honor of her mother. She was honoring her mother and her family by using her middle name, Alta Milburn, as part of that. And as the caption there, this Apollonius of Rhodes is the guy who wrote Jason and the Argonauts. And here's a line from it: "Nothing shall part us in our love until Thanatos, who was the ancient Greek god of death, at his appointed hour removed us from the light of day." Um, it's a neat tribute to them. They were married, obviously, just about 50 years, and it was a blessed marriage. They had, obviously, my dad was the oldest of their two children, and he had a sister. They had a daughter that was 4 years younger than he was. But they're still in Cuba City, and I'm pretty sure this is the last slide. Almost. All right, so here is once again a shot of the coin, graded for free by CACG, but like I say, that's immaterial. I'm just so honored to have and to hold the coin. Much that we have become, and this is true of all of us, and are forevermore, we owe to those who came before us and to the deep and abiding love which they shared. Now, I've got to tell you, I know this is the last slide. I've got to tell you I think it's an amazing story. We'll see if you guys are impressed. So remember, Dr. Frank died in 1948. I live in Denver, Colorado, 1,000 miles from Wisconsin, and I don't get out every year to Wisconsin, but periodically I go back to Wisconsin, and yes, I go to Cuba City because both my grandparents and my parents are buried at Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Cuba City. Cuba City is now about 2,000 people. It's just a quiet, rustic, little southwestern Wisconsin farm town, an enjoyable place to be. And in 2018, 70 years after Dr. Frank had died, and I'm emphasizing the time here, I went to visit at Mountain Pleasant Cemetery, my grandparents and my parents, and I did, and got in the rental car, and I was going to head back toward Madison, but I was hungry. So I drove through Cuba City. It didn't take very long. And on the other side of Cuba City is Weber's meat packing plant, processing plant. And I thought, well, I'm hungry. I think I'll go in and get a Landjäger or something like that, a sausage to eat out of the hand until I get to someplace where I can buy more food. So I walk into Weber's processing plant, and right by the main entrance, there's a guy even older than I am. I was 72 then, and it turns out his name was Norm Weber. He was the patriarch of the Weber meat processing plant, and he had a desk set up to be kind of the unofficial greeter of anyone who came in to, buy some hamburger or steaks or whatever. And when I walk in the door, he says to me, "Welcome, Sonny. What brings you to Cuba City?" Well, here I am 72 and he's calling me Sonny, but I figure, all right, he looks like he's about 80, so I guess he gets to do that if he wants. "Well, sir," I said, "I'm just here. My grandparents and my parents are buried over in Mount Pleasant, and I was over visiting them." "Oh," he says, "I've lived in Cuba City all my life. Tell me who your grandparents and your parents were. I bet I knew them." Well, yeah, my grandfather was a doctor here for half a century or so. He was Dr. Frank Bair. "Oh, Sonny, oh, have I got a story to tell you?" So Norm went on to say how it was. I'll be Norm again. "Yeah, Sonny, it was when I was 9 years old. Me and my buddy Joe in the spring of 1948, after the farmers had plowed their fields and there was nothing but black dirt out there, we took my dad's golf clubs and a bunch of golf balls and went to the edge of the road and were hitting golf balls into the farmer's field because they're so easy to find when there are no weeds and no corn growing or anything like that. We could just walk out and get them. And we were having a competition, Sonny, where, who can hit the golf ball the farthest? Well, I wound up and swung with all my might and drove a mighty drive way out into the farmer's field. And I said to my buddy Joe, I bet you can't beat that one, Joe. He teed up his golf ball, says, I'm gonna go even farther than that. And he wound up and took an incredible swing, and Norm was too close to the backswing. When Buddy Joe brought his club around, the head of the club hit Norm on the head, knocked him over, almost knocked him out. And as often happens with head injuries or head wounds, Norm started to bleed like a stuck pig at age 9 or whatever. Well, Joe panics a little bit, but they're right by the road, and a car was coming down the road. So Joe runs out and flags down the car. Stop, stop. My buddy's hurt. We got to take him to the doctor. So they loaded, the driver got out and helped load Norm with his bleeding head into the car, and they drove into Cuba City to Dr. Bair's office. As Norm put it, he said, they dragged me in there, kind of carried me in, and his nurse, Cookie was Frank's nickname for Emma, because she was as sweet as any sugar cookie ever made. But Norm said, Cookie cleaned me up, and then Dr. Frank stitched me back together again. And I'm listening to that with my jaw practically hanging down to my knee, thinking, wait a minute. 1948 is when my grandpa died, and 1948 is when this guy, Norm Weber, got hit on the head, and he's got to be the last living patient that my grandfather, Dr. Frank Bair, treated, and that, yes, my grandmother, his nurse Cookie, cleaned up so that, the blood was stanched a little bit, and it was all ready to be stitched together again. I just thought that was unbelievable. And just to hear that story from Norm, it was incredible. But it was like my grandparents were alive again as Norm is telling me this story about how he got cleaned up and stitched back together again after his buddy Joe whacked him on the head with a golf club. I've gone back, I've seen Norm twice since 2018. Every time I come back, he's in the store and he tells me the same story again. But I love it. It brings my grandparents back to life as I'm talking to what's got to be the last patient that Dr. Frank and his nurse Cookie, my grandmother, ever treated. Well, there's a neat story. I hope that the presentation involving romantic love has been a pleasurable one for all of you. I guess I can turn it back over to you, Liana, to take any comments or questions or answers or whatever that you might have from either the live audience or the Zoom people.
All right, then if you are watching on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says Q&A. You can click on that, type in some questions, send them that way. We will not read off your name unless you put it in the body of your question, as I drop my papers. So they will be read anonymously unless you specifically want Bob to know you're watching. So do we have any questions in the room?
Yeah, one comment, Bob. In 1933, U.S. citizens were supposed to turn in their gold coins. There was a collector exemption, of course, but not a lot of people understood that. And it seems that your grandparents did because they kept this coin.
I think, that was Executive Order 6102, if I remember right, but I believe it allowed citizens to hold up to $100 in gold coins, but also coins that were, how were they described? Special or rare or something like that was the wording. It was to prevent museums, for example, like the Smithsonian, from having to give up its gold coin collection. It was really targeting big boys who had lots of gold coins, trying to draw that in to be melted and put into bars in Fort Knox or whatever. But with a $100 exemption per citizen, something like a $5 coin was just part of it. And who knows? I never, I guess there were some 2.5 Indians. I can remember when I was a kid seeing my dad with some 2.5 Indian coins that came from his dad that I think he sold at some point. This is the only one that I know of that's in the Bair family still. But you're right. Yeah, after that Executive Order 6102, there was an obvious limitation placed on how much could be held unless you were the Smithsonian or some other museum with a tremendous collection that you didn't want to part with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to have you go ahead and stop the screen share, Bob. I meant to say that before we got started with questions. But at the top of your screen, there should be a little red button over on the right that says Stop Share.
Yep. Okay. So I hit Stop Share. All right.
Yes. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
Another comment, how much do you want for the coin? Just get it.
All the tea in China would not get it from me. All the gold in Fort Knox, and I don't want to get into a discussion about that. All the gold in Fort Knox could not get it from me. There's nothing that can get it from me. Period. End of story.
All right. Anyone else?
We have another question here. What's a good source for love tokens in terms of buying and selling?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of that.
What's a good source for love tokens, just in terms of buying and selling and acquiring pieces?
I'm still missing the first part. It's about love.
What's a good source for love tokens as far as buying and selling?
I see them in, for instance, Heritage or Stack's Bowers auctions or whatever every now and then. There is a love token society. I'm not involved with it, but I know it exists. Leanna, you may know some things about that. I have no idea how many members and so on, but I'm sure that if you made a contact with the Love Token Society and said, where can I get these things? They would have some sources or some input. But I do see them periodically turning up in major auctions because there are love token collectors who love the history that is represented and the absolute incredible artwork that's done as these very skilled jewelers would flatten out one surface and then engrave very skillfully the desired initials in the way that the people wanted them.
All right. Any others?
I think that's it.
All right. I believe that's it. Thank you so much, Bob, for taking the time to present. I know you've given many presentations with us over the years, and we're always happy to have you back.
I love it. Thank you, Leanna, and everyone for allowing me in once again.
All right, I did earlier today, we also had a presenter talking about a specific presentation in the past. And since Bob has so many that he's done for us before, I just thought I'd touch on how to find some of those past presentations. So they're in a few different places. They're up on the Newman Numismatic portal. If you're familiar with it, you can just go on, search the title, search the presenter, or if you go into the multimedia collections, you can find them organized by year from the symposium. They're all also on YouTube. Again, search the title, search the presenter, it should come up. Or if you can go to the Newman Numismatic portal YouTube channel, they're organized into playlists there by event. And finally, on the symposium website, if you go to recordings at the top of the screen, you'll be taken to a page that links to both of those places, as well as an Excel spreadsheet you can download that is organized by speaker, title, topic, date, and a few other categories you can sort by. So there are quite a few different ways to get to those. That Excel spreadsheet will have all of them listed. So if you don't really know what you're looking for and you just want to see what's out there, that might be an easy place to start. Otherwise, that's it for this one. Of course, all of this year's presentations are being recorded and they'll be added to all of those places in about 2 weeks. If you would like to be notified via email when those are up, you can subscribe to our email list. You can do that on the symposium website on the homepage, or if you're here in person, there's a piece of paper at the back of the room by the light switch. That is going to wrap us up for this one. We will be back at 1:30 Central with Christopher McDowell speaking on early North American Indian peace medals. So Thank you all, and hope you will join us again for the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.